Before Jimi Hendrix became widely recognized as the greatest guitarist to ever live, like any other aspiring guitarist, he spent time as a journeyman guitarist playing his way through a variety of bands and settings. Despite one day becoming an all-time great, in his early days, he was more of a menace to his bandmates than anything else. At the very beginning of his career back in 1959, Jimi Hendrix played in his first gig as a guitarist. He was 16 at the time and had been invited to audition for a local band in the Seattle area. He got the gig, which was a 2-set performance, and it was held at a Jewish synagogue in Seattle. Composer Samuel E. Goldfarb was the musical director of the synagogue and oversaw the performance. According to reports, Hendrix and Goldfarb never got around to bonding with one another. The night of the performance came, and during the first act, Hendrix was playing wildly and showing off, dropping to his knees, sticking out his tongue, and flailing his arms. This led to him getting fired in between acts, ultimately not even playing in the second act. And this would not be the only time that his stage antics and flamboyant style would cost him a paycheck. Later on, he played in many other bands in his late teens from which he was not fired, which included the Velvetones and many other bands that were made from the fragments of the Velvetones and their subsequent bands. After this run of being in bands, Jimi Hendrix had the choice between joining the military or going to prison after being caught riding in stolen cars. He ultimately decided to go into the military and completed his paratrooper training in 1962. However, his superiors had grown critical of his personal conduct. He was often caught missing bed checks and napping while on duty. All this led to his platoon sergeant filing a report requesting his discharge. Then, later in 1962, the sergeant got his wish, and Jimi Hendrix was discharged from the United States Army. After leaving the Army and returning to the music scene, Hendrix continued playing in bands in what was known as the Chitlin Circuit, until 1964, where he got his first significant role. He was hired as the lead guitarist in Little Richard's band in 1964. However, his stint in the band didn't even make it a full year. Little Richard's brother, Robert Penniman, recalls Jimi Hendrix frequently being late to things, missing buses, and upstaging Little Richard. On more than one occasion, there were instances of Jimi Hendrix getting chewed out by the band and the leader Little Richard after doing something too flamboyant or attention-grabbing on stage. Little Richard and Jimi Hendrix consistently clashed over tardiness, wardrobe, and stage antics. Long story short, Jimi Hendrix's time in the band did not last and he was fired in late 1965. However, Little Richard has praised Hendrix as being a phenomenal guitar player. In hindsight, it's very clear that he is proud to have had Jimi in his band, and was very fond of the career he had after his time in the band. In the middle of his time with Little Richard, Jimi played with Ike and Tina Turner. This gig only lasted a few weeks. Hendrix is obviously famous for his use of pedals and creativity and innovation when it comes to creating sounds on the guitar. It was this curiosity that got him kicked out of Ike and Tina Turner's band. Ike Turner himself claimed that Hendrix was way too obsessed with these gadgets. He would get very experimental with sounds, and ultimately his playing could hardly be heard, and it would just lead to a loud, distorted sound. But it was this very level of experimentation and innovation that ultimately made Hendrix famous. After only a few weeks, Ike Turner recalls that he had to let him go because of all of his experimentation with pedals. Like every guitar fan, Ike Turner remains grateful that this firing did not deter Hendrix from achieving all the things that he did. After all the adversity he faced, it seemed like nothing would keep him down. It's clear that Hendrix was destined to carve out his own path, no matter the setbacks. His journey through rejection and experimentation ultimately led him to redefine what it meant to play the guitar. From a troublemaking sideman to an unstoppable force in music, Jimi Hendrix's history of getting fired is a testament to his creative vision, which at the time, some people just couldn't see it yet. But it's clear now that Jimi knew something they all didn't.